Brendan, and with me is guest critic Dave, and as always, Rob. Public Enemies is set in 1933, a few years into the Depression, and the whole story centers around John Dillinger and his cat-and-mouse game between the soon-to-be FBI. He's tracked down by Melvin Purvis, and he begins a romantic relationship with a coat check girl, Billy Fletcher. And the film pretty much chronicles the downfall of his gang, as well as the birth of the FBI. Public Enemies was a movie I was looking forward to seeing a long time. They even shot some of the film out here in our native Indiana, which is very interesting when it was happening. But what I was even more pumped up to see was a Michael Mann movie, and particularly a John Dillinger movie. I've always grown up hearing stories about John Dillinger, even going to a John Dillinger museum out here. The film concentrates on John Dillinger, whereas the title refers to Public Enemies. The film really only concentrates on one of those public enemies. I felt John Dillinger's whole crime crew gang, they really could have gone into them a little more interesting. I mean, I know a little bit about their histories and stuff, having read up on the topic, and it seemed like they just sort of glorified cameos for the actors playing them. They really had no moments. They just sort of were there in the backgrounds, and during the shootouts it was really hard to sometimes see which gang member was who, but usually the camera would be centered on Johnny Depp. Which not there's anything wrong with that, because it's his film all the way. I mean, Christian Bale is almost more of a supporting character up until midway through the film, and it really didn't feel like they gave him any real depth to his character. I mean, Christian Bale is just sort of there to take down Johnny Depp, and that's as far as they go with his character. I know there's anything wrong with it. I think Christian Bale did a fine job with it, and it was, I think, a smaller role for him to tackle, with a little more precision. But the real high point I would give the film's highest points for is the action scenes, or the shootouts. The shootouts were all amazing, as Michael Mann is known for. I mean, it's almost like it combined the sweeping romance of Last of the Mohicans and the action scenes of Heat into like a 1930s setting, which was interesting, because I kind of felt it mixed two of what I think Michael Mann's best movies is Heat and Last of the Mohicans. But the Little Bohemia, there's a gunfight that takes place at Little Bohemia, and it's almost on par with the major gun battle in Heat. It takes place in downtown LA, and it's one of the best Michael Mann has shot in his career, I think. The sound design, which is something I normally don't comment on, but in Michael Mann movies he really makes sure it's almost like you are in the shootouts with the characters. You can feel the sounds of the guns so clearly. There's not music ramping it up. He only uses slow motion very slightly in this movie, and it's not a gimmicky or cliche thing when he does do it. But during the gunfights it felt like you were there. It felt like there was danger present, and it definitely, the guns sounded very powerful and intimidating. I don't remember the last time I was in a theater really thinking, the guns were as powerful as they were in that. But on another note, Johnny Depp was very good with his acting, but as a common thing in Michael Mann movies, there's not much character development. You sort of see the characters as they are, and you sort of get into them as the film progresses. And Johnny Depp is always very easy to get into, but some of the other characters, it wasn't as easy to jump into their roles. It felt like at 2.5 hours, if the movie had gone on to 3, I still would have sat there and watched it. But the really only other co-star I can really comment on is, I'll put the actor's name at the bottom of the screen because I don't know right now, is who played Babyface Nelson. I mean, they should almost do an entire film about Babyface Nelson. Purely and simply, he stole every scene he was in, even from the great Johnny Depp. And I definitely think they should almost do a Babyface Nelson film with the same actor. But the only other low point I have of this film is a few historical inaccuracies. They rewrite history a little. If you're expecting a history lesson, you're going to kind of get a Hollywood version of a pretty solid crime story. And that's what this film is. It's a very solid crime epic. Dave?
I thought the film was really good. The story was like real up to date, and all the facts were there. Like he was saying, I like the gun battles mostly, how they made the guns sound like a lot louder than you hear them in most films nowadays. And thing that I didn't like though was the type of film that they used to film the movie. It was basically like the same type of film that they use for documentaries nowadays. like you'd see on History Channel or on NBC or any channel like that.
See, that didn't bother me because a lot of people on the internet were making a huge fuss over it, and Michael Mann's been using that sort of film for a couple of years now, so I kind of expected it, and it didn't bother me. I mean, it's high definition, so it's very precise and stuff. And the only time it really bothered me is a couple of the scenes take place in clubs and stuff and restaurants, and it's hard to really make out who's there or the setting they're in. I mean, you can see like Johnny Depp's face, but the rest of the room is very hard to make out. And I just think it was sort of their cinematography style. I think they were going for like naturalistic lighting and stuff like that.
Right.
But sometimes I kind of felt it didn't benefit with the HD as much as it would have with like film or any other stuff.
Because I remember there's one scene where, in particular, where Johnny Depp and the guy that played Babyface Nelson, they're out in the woods and they're in a shootout battle with the detectives, and then the way the film was, it almost did look like something they would use for like a documentary on like a gangster documentary almost. To tell you the truth, I think the type of film they use, it kind of makes the movie look more dramatic and more kind of actually like a little bit scarier in a way too. What did you think, Rob?
Well, as you guys may know, the last week I've been watching other movies about John Dillinger's life. As a matter of fact, I did a video on them, which you can find on our page. Overall, I was slightly disappointed with this film, but the plus side of Public Enemies is Johnny Depp's Dillinger. I probably liked this portrayal of Dillinger the best. The other films, the other Dillingers, they're very cocky, arrogant, and here Depp's Dillinger is he's more down to earth, and he's portrayed as caring about what the public thinks. He doesn't want to do kidnappings. He doesn't want to bring women and children along, and I also like the contrast between him and Babyface Nelson in this film. Babyface Nelson is portrayed as a loud character, and he likes to shoot people during the holdups, while Depp's Dillinger just wants to get in, get the money, and leave. And Dillinger doesn't want to take farmers' money, and I thought that was a nice touch. And Babyface Nelson seemed to want to be at the center of attention, while Depp's Dillinger just doesn't want it that way. Overall, one of the criticisms I had with the 1973 version of John Dillinger was it seemed like all the cops were getting killed and shot, and hardly of the gang members were getting hurt. But here it seemed like it was a little bit more balanced here, and it was very nice that the filmmakers were able to get some of the real locations for this picture. I think that really helped a lot. But overall, I didn't think the pacing of this film was really that bad. I thought it went from point A to point B very well, and I think it went pretty smoothly. And but overall, I didn't feel engaged with this movie. I felt like I was just sitting there taking it in. I felt like the 1973 version is still the better of the three films I've seen about John Dillinger. And another thing I noticed is, again with Christian Bale, I know I've been slamming Christian Bale a little bit with another review I did, Terminator Salvation, and that was, I felt that he didn't really become the character until like the last third of the movie, and I kind of felt the same way with this picture. I thought that Christian Bale didn't really bring it until like the last third of the movie, where he, after the lodge shootout, I felt like earlier he was just there to move the plot along, and then finally he really brought something to the role, but he did a fine job here, I think. But I felt like he was cast in the movie just as box office appeal to add to Johnny Depp. But overall, Public Enemies, I thought was a nice picture, but I was still slightly disappointed with it. I still think the 1973 version of John Dillinger is a better film about the character, about the person. Well, I'm still going to go ahead and say see it in theaters, but just as a mild recommendation, I was a little bit disappointed with this movie.
I'm going to go ahead and say see it in theaters also, because it stuck to the basic facts, and the story carried along and everything, and I thought it's really the type of movie that people should see in theaters, especially with the action, and to hear how those guns sound too. It's probably sound better in theaters than when it comes out on DVD.
I also have to say see it, but I have to agree more with Rob and just give it a mild see it. In terms of a Michael Mann movie, he's made better films, and Johnny Depp is great in this, and I didn't have as many problems with Christian Bale, but It's a very solid crime movie, but it's definitely no Godfather or Goodfellas or even Untouchables. But it's definitely a very well done, well shot, and well acted crime film. Thank you for watching, and please remember to comment and subscribe if you like what you see. Thank you for watching.